Now we are going to continue our journey on percentages, handling a very critical thing called percentage increase or decrease, which is the pain point of all our confusion. Now let's say the number 120 increases to 150. So 120 is the initial value and 150 is the final. And the change is nothing but 150 minus 120, which is plus 30. Now the question comes, by what percentage did the number increase? Or we can reframe this question, by what percentage is the final greater than the initial? And again, as discussed in the last video, it's nothing but value by base times 100. The value here is nothing but the change that we are trying to compute. The increase, which is nothing but 30. Now the confusion comes, what should be the base? Should it be 120 or 150? Now I'm going to point you to a very specific thing in the question that you will find very often. Now whatever comes after than is going to be considered as the base. So here, greater than the initial, so initial value is 120 and we will consider 120 as the base. And thus we get 1 by 4, which is nothing but 25%. But if the question were to change, by what percentage is the initial lesser than the final? In this scenario, the first thing that's going to happen is the direction of arrow is going to change. Now we are tracking from 150 to 120, and that means there is a decrease of minus 30. And while computing percentage, we are going to use the same thing. The value is going to be 30. Again, we will use the same rule. Whatever comes after than is going to be the basis of comparison. So the basis is going to be 150, and solving this fraction we get a decrease of 20%, which is indicated by the negative sign. Now again, the examiner can ask you a different type of question, but the basic pattern remains the same. So let's say we have 150 and it's increased by 20%. Now what will be the final value? Now the thing is very simple. 150 is there and 20% of 150 is going to be 30, which comes out to be 180. So the final number is going to be 180. As simple as that. But let's see another way to solve the same problem. Let's take 150 as common. And we know that 20% is nothing but 1 by 5, which evaluates to 6 by 5 from our fractions. Finally, we get the same thing, which is 180. But the interesting thing to observe is this 1 plus 20%. This is something really interesting. 1 plus 20% is nothing but a multiplication factor. So we multiply 1 plus 20% with the initial value to get the final value. And we'll learn a little bit more about this multiplication factor in the last part of this tutorial. Let's say there was some number that is increased by 30% to get 260. Now let that number be x. We take x common, and this is again the multiplication factor, which is 1 plus 3 by 10, which is 13 by 10. Now you see that this multiplication factor is divided by the final value to get the initial value. And from fractions, we know how to divide using fraction. It reciprocates. So this comes out to be 200. Now comes the interesting part, that is the multiplication factor. So we can write the final value as initial times the multiplication factor, which is 1 plus p by 100, where p is in percentage. For example, a 30% increase means 1 plus 30 by 100, which is nothing but 1.3. And with this, we come to an end of our discussion on percentages. I hope this will clear up your confusions, and please keep the diagram of the arrow pointing from some initial value to the final value in your mind. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.